Hello, everyone. I'm Eric D'Souza, and you're joining me today for another episode of Crime Writers of Canada's podcast. And we are in the process of interviewing all the members of Crime Writers of Canada who have been nominated for an award. And occasionally, not very often, I get to interview somebody who's been nominated for two awards. And that person is Lis Angus. Hi, Liz. How are you?
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Liz Angus is nominated for two awards, as I mentioned. Her novel, The Other Family, published by Next Chapter, is nominated for Best Crime Novel Set in Canada, sponsored by Shaftesbury. And her story, Under the Circumstances, published in a capital mystery anthology by Ottawa Press Publishing, is shortlisted for the Best Crime Short Story, sponsored by Crime Writers of Canada. A little bit about you. Originally from Alberta, Liz has also lived in Germany, Ottawa, and Toronto. Before turning to fiction, she worked with children and families in crisis, later as a business writer, conference organizer, and policy advisor while raising two daughters. Her two suspense novels, Not Your Child and The Other Family, have been well received. She lives in a small town south of Ottawa with her husband. If you don't mind, let's start with the novel, The Other Family. I'm going to say you start with a bang. They tell us in writing school always to sort of start our story right from the heat of the action and go from there. And most writers ignore that advice. You definitely did not. And I'm just going to read it. The woman slid three photos to me across the table, her manicured nails immaculate. I know you don't want to believe me. You need to take a look at these. That's not even the beginning of the conversation. So you chose to drop us off in the sort of tense environment right in the middle of it. A, what's going on? And B, why did you decide this is where I want to begin it?
What's going on is that um, the woman who's pushing the photographs across the table has come to tell Julie, a librarian in Ottawa, that in fact Julie's father had another family, and that the woman who turned her name is Frances, her that woman is her half sister. So yes, I did start right in the middle of everything, but let me tell you, that's the benefit of writing and rewriting. My very first, my first draft had about three chapters ahead of that, and with some other storylines, and I dropped them completely. And again, I really do believe that it's true that to start right where something is happening, that's the key. But it took me several drafts to get to that point. I've always heard that all writing is rewriting, and I firmly believe in that. It means I take a long time because I write lots of drafts.
Um, you did something on your website that a lot of people don't do is to entice us to join your newsletters. You have some of those hidden chapters that you decided to cut. It's hard to throw those out, right? So it was good of you to recycle them.
Yes, I did. So I do have this little bonus download for people that sign up that has a couple of outtakes from the novel, and they don't even include the ones I described to you, the ones that were the old ones at the beginning. They weren't really worth saving, in my opinion. But those two were ones that I liked, but they really just interrupted the momentum of the story. And one of the things I want to write the kind of story that I love to read, which is the kind that, first of all, it's an ordinary person and something extraordinary happens to them that brings danger, dread, fear building throughout the story. So that's the kind of story I like to write. Now, that kind of story can't um, let you down in the middle of the buildup. It has to keep the momentum going. It has to increase the momentum. So that was always my challenge, to take out the stuff that really does not need to be there. But I did hang on to a few of my favorite chapters, and it was nice to be able to put them in a little bonus delivery for people who sign up.
Very kind of you. I don't think I'm saying too much from what you've already told us, that these are two half sisters. Um, they seem very different from each other. So they share 50% of their DNA, but they grew up very differently. Well, again, I'm going to leave it to you to tell us what you want to tell us. But how are these sisters similar and how are they different?
Well, in fact, I'm not sure either of them thinks of the other as their sister. Um, Definitely, Frances thinks of Julie as a competitor for their father's attention, and is quite angry at her for actually existing. And Julie denies for some time denies the very fact of this story. But sometimes reviewers use a phrase that you wish you'd come up with. Well, one of my reviewers that had the phrase, it said, but just a minute, I have it here. I keep forgetting it. It says, some family secrets don't stay buried. They come looking for you. And that's what's happened here. This is a secret that Julie knew nothing about, that Frances also knew nothing about. Frances discovered it and comes after Julie. And so the story, that part of the story is in the past. But in fact, this is not, backstory is not the point here. The point is what happens between them in the present. And in fact, they are two different families. And I'll just correct you on the title of the book. It's not The Other Family, it's That Other Family. But there's a very uninteresting reason for that. I had always had it as I was writing it. The Other Family was going to be its name. Then another author managed to write a book and publish it in the same year with that title. So, and in fact, I'm glad I didn't just duplicate her title, because when you bring it up in the library, the two books come up next to each other. So I needed to have my own name. But so now that they know each other, know about each other, then confronting what that means and all the emotions and feelings that brings forward, that drives the drama and drives the events that happen as the thing unfolds.
Um, I'm sorry that I keep calling it that other family. Or sorry, the other family. When I wrote down that, um, I wanted to ask you, and I've been asking you this from a few authors recently, but you are nominated for Best Crime Novel Set in Canada. Do you feel that your story is a uniquely Canadian story, or is setting not that important to it?
I'm sure it could happen in many locations. Um, I said it in Canada because that's where I live. And I also, I believe that we should use Canadian settings. We're so familiar with settings in New York and London because novels take place there all the time. But we have just as interesting settings here. And I'd like to just bring readers to our own part of the country, and that why shouldn't it be as interesting and dramatic as some of those other neighborhoods that we've read so much about?
Well, sticking with the Ottawa theme, your story, Under the Circumstances, is part of a capital mystery anthology. To those who don't know, Ottawa is the capital of Canada, which is
Yes.
the inspiration for the anthology. Before we go to the story itself, I'm sure Mike Martin would love a plug if you tell us about the project in general.
Well, this is a wonderful project of Mike Martin's. He proposed to publish an anthology written by Ottawa crime writers, of which there are many, and that all the stories should take place in Ottawa or the Ottawa region. And there were quite a few more stories put forward than there was room for. But the final collection is just lovely. They're all very different. I was quite honored to be included, and more than honored to have it nominated as a finalist for the CWC. But I do think this is a lovely anthology. And in fact, there's a second one coming out. There's been an invitation for submissions for the second volume, and I think it'll be equally excellent.
Yes, some of my favorite authors live in Ottawa. So does my uncle, so I should visit more
Okay.
often.
Yeah.
Um, Under the circumstances, again, I don't want to say too much. I'll leave it to you to explain the story. It is short, though. I'm sure Mike would have allowed you more words. And I know with short stories, they always tell us to cut out all the fat. You definitely did that. What is it about, and what was your desire to keep it that short?
Well, the story is really it's one extended scene interspersed with enough backstory that you know what's behind what's going on in the scene, and also what is driving um, the protagonist's action. And I'm not going to really give you a bunch of the backstory, but I will say that it begins again in the middle. A woman comes home, enters the door and she of her house, and she immediately senses that something is not right in the house. She hears a sound, and yes, there's someone in her house, and comes out, and she realizes that she has to act. She cannot. She has to act to protect her daughter, who would otherwise be soon coming home and would be confronted with what's going on. But so again, what I was trying to do in this story was in a much shorter, a smaller canvas, create that building dread and have the protagonist take action to resolve the situation.
I see a theme in these shorts, or this short story, this novel, and even in your previous work. There's sort of a mama bear, almost like what would an ordinary woman, as you say, do in extraordinary circumstances to protect her family. Am I reading into it too much, or is this something that you
No,
like to talk about?
that actually has become the theme of all those three items that you mentioned. Um, and I've wondered about myself because I don't feel particularly that this is a. Now, of course, I'm a mother, and I do know the feelings of, those terrible things never happened to my children, but I did have things happen that I feared. So, as a writer, you do want to draw on your own emotions, just as actors do, in order to create some authenticity to the emotion that you're trying to portray on the page. But the other thing is that all my, um, certainly my novels, are multi-character. And so my characters are not only the mother, they're also so in That Other Family, Frances is also a character. I also see what her relationship to her mother was, and in fact, to the grandmother. I also have Julie's young children, her daughter, who is 17 and about to finish high school. And so it's true, I feel more comfortable writing from the point of view of female characters, but I have my own memories of the various ages of being a woman and the various things that confront you. And they aren't all being a mother. There's also being a daughter, being a person who's striving for independence, who wants to figure out who they are and wants to create a life for themselves. And all of those I try and put forward into my stories. But it's true that family life has been a theme of my writing, and also betrayal, trust. Who can you count on? How do you count on yourself? How do you um, bring forth the determination to make something happen? All of those things. I will say, writing is not. I'm not one of those people who can just sit down and it flows. I struggle for every scene, um, and I have a wonderful freelance editor that I have worked with for both of my novels, and I'm very grateful to him for forcing me to go through paring away of the extraneous.
Do you want to give him a shout out?
Uh, Stephen Parolini, he's a writer in Colorado.
Mm.
And actually, it was Katie Tallow who recommended him. She worked with him on her first novel, and when I got to the point of realizing I needed some external help, I asked her who she worked with, and so Steve's been doing a wonderful job with me ever since.
That is great. Keep up the good work. I always like to sort of end it with, what are you working on now?
Well, I have been semi working on a third novel for about the past year, but I'll say it hasn't gelled into a full story yet. I have characters, I have events, but I still need to do a lot of pairing.
It's always enjoyable to talk to an author and know that they put their heart and soul into it as much as I do. Not every one of us could do it in 6 months. So, congrats again, Liz. I tell everyone I don't know who won, so I could root for you, and I could root for you twice.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.